It is 3 in the morning in Tehran, a city of 10 million people, most of them asleep. Then the sky explodes. No warning, no siren, no time. Just fire falling from the sky, and children who will never wake up again. This is not a military briefing. This is not a press release. What you're about to hear is what actually happened when missiles rained down on one of the most populated capitals on Earth, and why the Western press called it a precision strike, while Iranian hospitals filled with the bodies of toddlers. If this matters to you, and it should, share this video before you finish watching it, because the algorithm is not your friend on this story. You are. On February 28, 2026, the United States and Israel launched a coordinated surprise attack on Iran. Not on a military installation deep in the desert, on a country, on a capital city, on neighborhoods where people were asleep. The strikes began while nuclear negotiations between Iran and the United States were still active. There was no declaration of war. There was no ultimatum that expired. There was no final warning broadcast in Farsi to the families of Tehran. There was just the sound of explosions, and then silence, and then screaming. Within 24 hours, the Iranian Health Ministry reported over 100 civilian casualties from the first wave alone. Within 72 hours, the numbers stopped being countable in a single sentence. By day 38 of the war, where we stand right now, the Iranian Health Ministry has confirmed more than 2,076 people killed, over 26,500 injured. But there is one number that cuts through all the others. 220 children. 220 human beings under the age of 18, killed by American and Israeli munitions in Iran since this war began. 18 of them were under the age of 5. 70 children under the age of 2 are currently being treated for injuries in Iranian hospitals. Let that settle. Not soldiers, not combatants, not militants with weapons. Babies, toddlers, teenagers in their beds. Now the West will tell you these are Iranian government figures. It will tell you to be skeptical. It will remind you of Iran's history of manipulation. Here is the problem with that argument. The human rights activists in Iran, a US-based organization that is openly critical of the Iranian government, funded in part by Western sources, has independently recorded more than 1,407 civilian deaths, including at least 214 children. These numbers align. When the government you oppose and the organization designed to challenge it arrive at the same figure, you do not get to call it propaganda. These children are dead. The strike on Nilufar Square in Tehran happened on the night of March 1st or 2nd. Families had gathered to break their Ramadan fast together. It was a moment of community, of prayer, of food shared between neighbors. A US-Israeli missile turned it into a mass casualty event. At least 20 civilians were killed. The strike on the town of Lamerd was different in its weapon, but identical in its result. Residential buildings, a sports hall, an ordinary Tuesday, 21 people dead, 4 of them children. An independent analysis concluded the weapon used was a precision strike missile, an American munition, state-of-the-art, used against a sports hall in a town most Americans cannot find on a map. In the Pardis district, east of Tehran, 6 people were killed in a single strike on a residential block. 3 of them were children. In the Resalat neighborhood of Tehran, a civilian area, a strike on a building affiliated with the Basij paramilitary force collapsed 3 adjacent residential buildings simultaneously. Between 40 and 50 people died. The Israeli military called all of these strikes precise. Here is what precision means in the context of Tehran. Israel issued evacuation warnings to the residents of Tehran's District 3. That district covers 30 square kilometers. It is home to 350,000 people. The warning was posted on X, in Farsi, in the middle of the night. It did not specify a safe direction. It did not name a safe location. It said, essentially, leave. Leave a megacity of 10 million, in the night, with no fuel certainty, no shelter guarantee, no government support. One resident interviewed after the attack said it plainly. The warning told us to be anywhere else but here, without telling us where that was. Meanwhile, Tehran has no bomb shelter system. Israel has reinforced security rooms built into every residential building by law. When sirens sound in Tel Aviv, citizens have 90 seconds and a destination. When missiles fell on Tehran, citizens had nothing. They were told to find underground parking lots. Parking lots. That is the civil defense infrastructure of a country absorbing the largest American bombing campaign since Iraq. The Iranian Health Ministry has documented what these strikes have done beyond the human body. More than 6,600 residential and commercial units have been targeted. 5,535 of them were homes. 65 schools have been hit. 14 medical centers have been struck, including the Gandhi Hospital in Tehran. The Norwegian Refugee Council reports that millions of Iranians have fled their homes. Iran's internet collapsed for over 60 hours. Connectivity dropped to 1% of normal levels. Not because a server went down, Because the cyber attacks that accompanied the airstrikes were designed to silence the country while it burned. You could not upload a video from Tehran while your neighborhood was being bombed. That is not a coincidence. There is a single piece of footage that defines this war for anyone who has seen it. CCTV footage captured the moment 2 Israeli missiles struck Tehran's Tadrish Square on June 15, 2025, during the earlier 12-day war. One missile hit a building. The second struck the middle of a busy intersection at rush hour. The explosion hurled multiple cars into the air. It ruptured a main water pipeline. The streets flooded. Among the dead was a 3-year-old girl, a 16-year-old boy, a pregnant woman, 18 civilians in a public square on a Sunday afternoon. Israeli officials said they were targeting Quds Force command centers at 10 locations in Tehran. There is no military installation visible in the footage. There are cars waiting at a red light. Iran released that CCTV footage weeks later and called it vivid evidence of a war crime. The Israeli military did not respond. The Western press gave the story 2 paragraphs. The numbers from this 2026 conflict are now dwarfing the 2025 12-day war that preceded it. In 12 days of fighting last June, Iran's government reported 935 people killed, including 38 children and 132 women. This current war has been running for 38 days. The children's death toll has gone from 38 to 220, and the strikes have not stopped. Tehran province alone accounts for 39% of all recorded attacks in this war. This is not a city being targeted at its edges. This is a capital being struck at its center, repeatedly, by 2 of the most advanced militaries on Earth. UNESCO has confirmed damage to over 120 Iranian historical sites, including the Chehel Sotun Palace in Isfahan, a World Heritage Site. UNESCO issued a statement that damaging its designated sites violates international law. The response from Washington was silence. Now understand the strategic picture around these civilian casualties, because Iran's situation is unlike anything the Western media bothers to explain. When Israel launched Operation Rising Lion on June 13, 2025, it did something extraordinary before the first jet crossed the border. Mossad operatives had already smuggled precision weapons inside Iran. They had constructed a covert drone base near Tehran. They disabled Iran's air defense systems from the inside before the outside attack began. Iran's generals died in their beds that morning, 30 of them, in minutes. 9 nuclear scientists were assassinated alongside them. This is why when Israeli missiles fell on Tehran in the hours that followed, there was no Iranian early warning system functioning. There was no coordinated civil defense response. There were no shelters. Iran was blinded before it was bombed. And into that blindness, into apartment buildings, into intersections, into Ramadan dinners, into schools, the missiles fell. Iran's health ministry has now confirmed that more than 300 health, medical, and emergency centers across the country have been damaged in this war. Not 300 military targets, 300 hospitals, clinics, and emergency stations. The International Committee of the Red Cross and multiple UN bodies have called for the protection of medical facilities. The bombing has continued. The Norwegian Refugee Council's head described the situation on the ground as Iranians being exhausted and traumatized, with millions displaced and nowhere safe to go. That is not the language of a military campaign achieving its objectives cleanly. That is the language of a population under siege. The West's silence on Iranian civilian deaths is not new. It has a pattern and a logic. When civilian casualties occur in Ukraine, they are named. Their ages are listed. Their photographs appear on front pages. When Iranian children are killed in Tehran, the headline reads, "US and Israel strike nuclear and military targets in Iran." The children are in the 14th paragraph, if they appear at all. The Iranian government confirmed 935 dead from the 2025 war, including 38 children. Human rights organizations put the total closer to 1,190. The Iranian health ministry in the current conflict now counts 220 dead children, with the number climbing every day. There is no monument for them in Western discourse. There is no moment of silence in the United Nations Security Council, a body where the United States sits with veto power and used it. There is no Amnesty International campaign with their faces. There are just numbers, and behind every number is a child who had a name. As of today, the war shows no sign of ending. Iran rejected a 45-day ceasefire proposal put forward by the U.S. just days ago. Iranian Supreme Leader Mojtaba Khamenei, who himself was injured in the February 28 strike that killed his father and 6 members of his family, has stated that Iran's forces will not be deterred. Iran has launched strikes across 9 countries in retaliation. It closed the Strait of Hormuz. It struck a British military base in Cyprus. It fired toward American positions in Bahrain, Kuwait, Qatar, Jordan, Saudi Arabia, and the UAE. The war has already killed over 1,400 people in Lebanon, as Hezbollah and Israel escalate simultaneously. This is no longer a conflict between 2 countries. It is a regional war. And it started, officially, legally, historically, while diplomats were still sitting across a negotiating table. The mainstream narrative will tell you this war is about nuclear weapons, about the security of Israel, about American interests in the Middle East. All of those things are real. All of those things matter. But none of them explain why a 3-year-old girl needed to die at a busy intersection in northern Tehran on a Sunday afternoon. None of them explain why toddlers under the age of 2 are currently hospitalized from shrapnel wounds. None of them explain why 65 schools have been bombed. None of them explain why a pregnant woman at Tahrir Square is counted only as a casualty statistic, while her name disappears from every Western broadcast. The story they are telling you is about strategy. The story happening in Tehran at 3 in the morning is about children. Both stories are true. Only one of them is being told. 220 children dead, and the number is still climbing. The question no one in the West is asking is simple. How many more before it stops?